First question, what is metformin? Metformin is a medical drug which is prescribed to people who are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. This is normally the very first medication which is prescribed to anyone who is diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. The reason that it's really safe, it's really effective, it doesn't cause much of any hypoglycemic symptoms most of the times. Now, the real mechanism of how metformin works, it's not the point of this video, but the point of this video is that you should know that metformin is an organic cation and it needs the help of organic cation transporter 1 to transport across the cell membrane. So what's organic cation transporter 1? OCT1, that's what I'm going to just call it. It's much easier to say that. OCT1 is a transporter protein. It helps organic cations, just like metformin, to transport across the cell membrane. Now, these cell membrane can be the cell membrane of small intestine, enterocytes, in the gut. You find these protein in a very large quantity in the liver. You can find these transporter protein in the kidneys, where they perform their function. Yep. So this article, the title which I showed you in the beginning, this article, the hypothesis, the main idea of this article is that people who uses metformin, 25% of these people develop some serious gastrointestinal side effects. These side effects include vomiting, nausea, uh, other things which are related to gastrointestinal. So the basic idea of this article is that metformin, which causes this GI side effects, is actually because of the use of OCT1 inhibiting drugs which the patients are using alongside metformin. For example, let me make it easy for you. For example, if there's a patient who's suffering from type 2 diabetes, he's taking metformin, but at the same time he's suffering from high blood pressure and he's taking a medical drug named verapamil. Now, verapamil is actually also classified as OCT1 inhibiting drug, which means that it not only helps lower the blood pressure, but on a sideline it is also classified and it also have properties of inhibiting this OCT1 gene. And as you remember, OCT1 gene, we need that for the transportation of metformin. So what's the hypothesis of the authors of this article is that when patients use OCT1 inhibiting drugs, they actually reduce the function of OCT1 protein, which in turns reduce the transportation of metformin from the gut to the body, which increases the metformin concentration in the GI tract, and that increased concentration actually causes the side effects. So to check this hypothesis, as I told you, the authors of the article, they had data from this Goddard study. They had data from around 10,000 people, 10,000 people who were suffering with type 2 diabetes. They had many kind of data. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to briefly tell you that they also had their hands on some of the very important genetic data as well from the patients, and most importantly, they also had the data for the variants of different OCT1 transporter protein. Now that I'll explain later in the video what's that. So, but the main part of the method is to understand that how the authors were able to define what is intolerance, who they're going to call intolerant patient. So they came up with an idea that the patients, who were prescribed metformin, but due to serious GI side effects, they had to stop receiving metformin within the 6 months. They were described as intolerant. And on the other hand, patients who were given a dose of 2000 milligram, or you can say 2 grams of metformin and they were given that for more than 6 months without any GI side effect. They were described as tolerant. Now they carried out some statistical analysis, like U test, p-value, t-test. They carried out a lot of statistical analysis for this data, and they came up with this results. Now this is the first result they have achieved, and this results basically tells you the characteristics of patients who are intolerant and patients who are tolerant towards metformin. In intolerant group they had 251 patients, and in tolerant group they had 1915 patients. The first thing they were able to figure out is that the intolerant group had an average age of 67, whereas tolerant group had an age of 58. There's a 10 years difference in the age, and if you calculate the p-value, you'll see that it's a very significant value, which from this result you can just mainly draw a conclusion that people who are elderly, they are more likely to be intolerant towards metformin. Next, you see the gender. Females tend to be more susceptible to become intolerant towards metformin. You can see in the bracket, you can see the percentage. 40% of the female were tolerant. So basically it means that less females were tolerant compared to men. And same pattern you see here, that more female, 56% of the female were intolerant, and more men, less men were intolerant. Next is weight. It's really interesting because you see on average intolerant people had around 10 kg less than the tolerant people, and you can see the p-value is quite significant. Same with the BMI, that 30.6 BMI for intolerant people. For tolerant people is 32.6, and statistically it's very significant. Now let me just give you my opinion here. You see, having a lower weight and having a lower BMI is actually a good thing, especially for type 2 diabetes patients. What I think basically what must have happened here, obviously the authors of this article didn't really talk about this thing, but I come up with my own assumption, and I think what must have happened is that when people become intolerant to metformin, their GP, their doctors, they become more concerned, and then I think that they try to convince them to lose weight, and people who are intolerant, they actually enters a much healthier lifestyle compared to the people who are tolerant, because for them, because metformin must be working, and maybe they're having even less regular checkups to their doctors. That's why they are not even convinced to attain a healthy lifestyle. That's just my assumption. Maybe if this study is carried out on a bigger scale, maybe we'll get different results. Moving on to the next results, HbA1c. For those of you who don't know HbA1c, that is the hemoglobin which is associated with sugar, chemically associated with sugar. All in all, let me just tell you, the lower the number is, the better it is. And even in this one, you can see the intolerant group was 8.3, that is the percentage, 8.3%, and 8.7% intolerant group. Now again, this is really interesting. As I said, I assumed here that people are entering healthy lifestyle. You can see that here as well. Their HbA1c is much less than the tolerant group. So I think my assumption, this result backs my assumption here. And moving to the next result, creatinine. Before moving to creatinine, let me move to creatinine clearance result. You see, because of the reduced OCT1 transporter function, you can see there is a less clearance of creatinine in intolerant people, whereas there is more creatinine clearance in the tolerant people. However, you see there is not much significant difference when you see the overall creatinine value in the body. It's pretty much the same, 87.2 and 87, which is, even statistically, you see the p-value is 0.8. It's quite high, which means statistically it's not really significant. I'm just gonna quickly move to the use of OCT1 inhibiting drug, because that is what our main article is about, and this is what actually the authors of the article are trying to prove. Uh, OCT1 inhibiting drug, the use of OCT1 inhibiting drug. You see here in this bracket, the percentage is written 47.8%. Almost half of the patients were using OCT1 inhibiting drugs in case of intolerant people, whereas 32.7, which is slightly less than one third of the population intolerant group, were using OCT1 inhibiting drug. And the result is quite significant, 0.001 p-value, very significant difference. uh, this is the first indication which shows that yes, there is some linkage of OCT1 inhibiting drugs, which makes people more susceptible to become intolerant towards metformin. I'll move to the next result. uh, in the start, I told you that the authors have had their hands on some genetic data from the patients as well. Uh, so using that data, they were able to divide this group of patients into four subgroups. The first group you see says carriers of one or no reduced function allele. It's talking about the OCT1 genotype, basically. What this group means that in this group, the OCT1 gene was perfectly fine, or either one of the gene was not functioning. Uh, but all in all, the gene function was proper. The OCT1 gene is properly functioning, and they were not treated with OCT1 inhibiting drugs. You see the odd ratio, the 95% clearance rate is 1. This one actually means that there is no it's not a significant value, it's not a significant result, which means that statistically they are they are not susceptible to develop intolerance against metformin. Moving to the next group, you see it's genetically it's same, one or no reduced function allele. Genetically it's same, but the only difference is that they were treated. Here they were not treated. Here they are treated with OCT1 inhibiting drugs, and you see the odd ratio just increases by 0.62. And the p-value becomes a 0.005, which is very significant. These two results actually shows you that yes, there is, sorry, I've just moved to the next slide. These two results here actually shows that yes, there is a significant difference when people are not using OCT1 inhibiting drug, when they are using inhibiting drugs. And the next two results shows you the same, but here two reduced allele functions are there, which means that the patients were already carrying some OCT1 gene mutation, but it didn't really stop the function of OCT1 genotype, but it was reduced to some extent. And when these people were treated with OCT1 inhibiting drugs, you see, without the drug, it was 2.27, the odd ratio, and it just doubles, almost doubles when they are given the OCT1 inhibiting drugs. It does show that the hypothesis was right, and there is a linkage of OCT1 inhibiting drugs with the intolerance towards metformin. Let me quickly go to the conclusion. The main conclusion which is derived from this article is that there are many characteristics from where we can identify people who are at high risks of developing an intolerance towards metformin. Some of them, they are age, if they are elderly, if they are female, they are more likely to become intolerant towards metformin. And also, uh, as I told you, the reduced gene function of OCT1 does contribute towards intolerance towards metformin, but it just doubles this statistical value just doubles when you add OCT1 inhibiting drugs with it, which clearly shows that the hypothesis of the authors were right, and they were able to prove it right with their results data. That's all for now. Uh, just before I finish, I just want to give you a take home message. When I was doing some research on this article, I found out that nicotine is also one of the OCT1 inhibiting drug, which means that nicotine, it's found in the cigarettes mostly. When I was doing research for, before I finish, I just want to give you guys a take home message, and it's that before I finish, I just want to give you guys a take home message. When I was doing research for this article, I found out that nicotine is also one of the OCT1 inhibiting drug. It has properties which can inhibit OCT1 drugs, OCT1 genes. So the take home message is that if you know someone who is having, sorry, if you know someone who has got type 2 diabetes and they are also active smoker, you should go talk to them, try to make them understand that nicotine in the cigarettes, it is one of the OCT1 inhibiting drug. It can make you, or it can put you at a high risk group for developing intolerance towards metformin. So maybe if their metformin is working right now, but because of their cigarette, it can just make them intolerant towards metformin. So this is an important point which you can discuss with your friends who are active smokers and who are unfortunately happens to be type 2 diabetic patients. So thank you so much. I'll see you in some next video.